Um, we are gathered here today, I think, with regards to what is on papers, right? I will just want to take you back a little bit and give you a background recap of the whole situation. This particular area, Welingara, as some people were perceiving or insinuating that it's a public property, it has never been a public property. It was a private property belonging to another person who sold it to Jah Oil. All the documentations to that effect were normal. There's no doubt about that. That's not even the issue on the table. And then this place, we started constructing this place way back in, we applied for this place way back in March. That is when we proposed to build. And then when we sent that application alongside with a lot of them, among them, because we have about 10 stations that we envisage for 2020 to open. And then PURA and the other stakeholders visited the locations concerned, and then they came out with a report saying that all the orders qualified except two. And this is Welingara and Kairaba. And then the reason they gave to that effect was that there is a 2018 regulation, petroleum regulation, that says that when you are constructing a petrol station, it should be located 50 meters away from residents and public assembly. So based on that, they said here and Kairaba didn't qualify. Okay, when we received that letter, we said, wait a minute. How can they say this place, as you can see, the location has been cordoned off by roads, both sides, did not qualify because of that 50-meter rule. So we appealed to them to reconsider their decision because that 50-meter rule has never been implemented as far as gas stations are concerned in this country. Nowhere. It has never happened before. It's unprecedented. So we asked them, based on that, let them look at it critically and come out with another solution because we disagree. Simply because it has never been implemented. So why implementing it today? So based on that, they said, okay, they will revisit again because we cited a number of issues also concerning the location of this place compared to other gas stations. When you look around as journalists, I will implore you to go around, check for yourself and look and see where you can find a gas station that is more spacious than this and that is more located in terms of cording it of itself away from the community. You will not find it. If you find, maybe it will be one or two. I can guarantee that. So they said, okay, they will check it again. So when they came again, they revisited. They came back and they stick to their gun. They said the same thing again, that the 50-meter rule still apply. And then we appeal again. We said something needs to be done because this 50-meter rule is not feasible. We all know. They themselves invited us in a meeting, and then in that meeting they agreed that the 50-meter rule is not feasible, it's not practicable, and it is posing a lot of problems when it comes to their regulatory side, because that has been the complaint of all the stakeholders in the sector. So we said, then what's the way forward? They said, okay, we should work together now and replace that 50-meter rule with something that is of more health and safety standard, rather than the 50-meter rule. So we agreed in that meeting that, okay, they said, since they said they're going to work now with stakeholders to try to modify the rule so that they will open the door for not only Jah Oil and other companies, but for the future too. 5-10 years down the line, somebody here who knows might be interested in investing in the petroleum sector, and then if that 50-meter rule is there, you might not have a property anywhere that will qualify. It means you wanted to invest, but you've been closed, you've been locked. And that I don't think is a fair practice. So we said, since now we have agreed that we're going to change the regulation, so we appealed to them, saying that can we be allowed to construct the structure whilst we wait for the amendment. They said, okay, they can allow that. They will allow us to do the structural work whilst we wait for the amendment. We didn't stop there. We appealed to the Minister of Petroleum also for them to mediate because it's the line ministry. And then we outlined our concerns. They invited a meeting. They wrote back to us saying that, okay, they will consider the situation. And they wrote back to us saying that few days after that or weeks, they invited us in a meeting whereby they summoned all the stakeholders in the industry, the petroleum industry. In that meeting, everybody who was present, including all the stakeholders, all gas station owners who are operating in the sector, agreed that the 50-meter rule is a menace. It is not tenable, it is not feasible actually, and it cannot be applied. And then we all agreed there also, we cited examples whereby the 2018 regulation itself has been violated from the onset, from the word go. Because so many stations came into fruition and they didn't meet that 50-meter rule regulation. So we said it is a problem for you as the regulators and it's a problem for us as the investors. So everybody agreed that let's change it and replace it with something more stringent, safety, health and safety measures. And then we all agreed and they said, okay, we'll adopt that and they will invite a subsequent meeting to do the validation. The validation came, everybody agreed again that let it go and let it be replaced. After that validation, then we started asking questions. Since now we have agreed, it is validated, now when is the new regulation coming out? At first they said before the end of December 2020. So based on that, by then this place was at an advanced stage. It was almost finished. We wanted to open by the 20th of December previously. And then we wrote to PURA to that effect, saying that we want to open here by 20th of December 2020 because we are anticipating that the regulation would have already been into force, as we've agreed. Then later we received messages saying that no, there is some little delay. Let us shoot for 1st of January, it will be into effect. Then we wrote again to PURA, just to be in compliance again, that we are cancelling the opening of Welingara and we'll push for January on the 1st, since that is the promised date. So this is why Welingara was open. We informed them. So Welingara came and then I went there on the 8th after that, trying to ask as to what is the way forward since the old regulation is no longer there, to be in compliance, since we are always into consultations, trying to work with all the stakeholders concerned. So I went there as a courtesy and, as the right thing to do, to ask them, now what do we do to regularize Welingara and Hydara? And they advised, and I asked them, do I have to reapply afresh again, like putting all the package together again, fresh? Or do I just need to write and rekindle the application? And they said, no, just write and apply. So I wrote, reapplying for this place and that place. That was on the 8th of January, and I sent it to them. So I was sitting in anticipation, waiting to get a reply in kind as to this time around, what is the response? Is it going to be a yes, because the regulation that bad or specifically is no longer there? Or is it going to be a no based on some other things that we can see if we can fix it? No, but instead they wrote back to us on the 15th, on a Friday, slapping us with a fine. So I said, when I first heard about it before receiving the letter, because it was out in the public domain before we could even receive the communique, and people were calling, did you see what is online? Did you see what is posted? I said, no, what happened? They said, well, they have fined you guys. Then I rushed to the office, the letter was not there. Later I was called that the letter came, and I opened it, and I saw, among others, that we are in blatant disregard of the regulations and the enforcement and so many other stuff, which we responded to because that was wrong. Because as far as we are concerned, the only correspondence we received from PURA putting us on notice that, they have seen canopies coming up and they don't understand why and we should desist. Then we said that's a misunderstanding then, because the whole structure thing was your idea, your permission for us to start that whilst we wait for the regulation. So we consulted again, we appealed again, and then talked again to allow us to just go to the next phase whilst we work on this regulation. And that was the only notice. And we did respond in writing to them. So, and that was the only one. And I think in good faith practices as partners in development, usually when you are hitting a major company or even a small company, first you give a false notice. You see whether they will comply. Maybe they have negotiated something with you, or maybe they have not negotiated. Send another one as a reminder. And if possible, a third one, or even if you don't want to send a third one, this time find them. But you only got one. And it was all about the 50-meter rule. And then that is when we asked them this question. Why are you imposing this 50-meter rule now on these two properties? When all the properties around this country, including our own that they already approved for us, didn't meet the requirement. So we asked them this question, why is that? And this is the question we will continue to ask up till this day. Why is it that they've been selective of these two places? I would have been glad if they come up with other reasons apart from the 50-meter. Maybe today we will not have been here, because we'll say, oh, it's a completely different thing that maybe is only specific to these two places. But there is nothing specific to these two places that is not out in the other places. Go out and see for yourself, and you will see what I'm trying to say. And these have been our cries with them, and these have been our qualms with them, for them to give us at least an explanation why these two specific places with this 50-meter rule. It is an answer we are still awaiting, and we implore the Minister of Petroleum in a letter we wrote to them for them to set up an inquiry to see whether we are lying about or just trying to be defensive. Let them set up an inquiry. Let them go out to the gas stations from 2018 to date, all those that got approval, whether they've met this 50-meter rule. As journalists too, I'm imploring you, go out there, start with Sinju, our own. I'm not going to point anyone. Start with the Jah Oil ones that have been approved, that have been given approval. Start with those ones and see whether they have met that criteria. They didn't. I can say this here, they didn't meet the criteria. So you see, our point here is we are all in this country to be regulated in somehow. The law is the law. If you are in business, you have to follow procedures. If you're in business, you have to abide by the rules that guides the business. But let it not be a selective rule. That is our problem. So when we are fine, I personally said, let's kick against it, let's fight it. But the CEO says no. It has come to a point whereby they have invoked a fine. So the moment we said we're going to challenge it and the fine drops somewhere, it's going to send a different signal. Go there and pay it first thing in the morning, Monday morning. So I went to the office because I didn't even know what amount to pay, because these are two conflicting amounts. 920 some versus 1.2 million. So I went with a blank check and I asked them, how do I pay in the first place? Where do I pay? Is it in the bank? Or do you have a department where I can pay? They said, go to finance. I went to finance. I asked them, I've come to pay, but I want to know how much to pay and where to pay. They said, oh, you can pay here. I said, okay, but how much am I going to pay? They knocked heads and they said, it's 1.2 million. I drafted the check there and I gave it to them. So this is the situation and this is where we stand. So negotiations are on the way also. The last thing they told us before the meeting we had with the Minister of Petroleum was to immediately close this place and sack all the staff, because that's how I call it. And I asked them, this is a country that is struggling with youth and unemployment. We are talking about back way. Youths are desperate in need of jobs. So these people just started less than, a month? And you want me to go and hand them letters and say, bye, go and wait home until we resolve this problem? It's going to send a very, very, very bad signal for the country. So on basis of that, we appeal to them that let us walk through this. Since the very regulation that you are talking about, I can say as we speak now, is dead. So this is the situation, unless if you have any further questions. Here? Very good point. You see, one thing about Jah Oil, he doesn't go for government allocation. All his properties, he acquired them legally in the open market. It's just like you have a compound to sell, you approach Jah Oil and say, I have a place that I'm selling. He looks at it, he likes it, you tell him the price. He doesn't most of the time even negotiate on the price. He will pay it as it is said. The same thing like this Wellinger petrol station. It was a private property before. It has never been a public property. It belongs to somebody. That person sold it to Jah Oil, and he bought it with the full price. So I don't know where those notions and perceptions are coming from, but it's a complete surprise to me.
So, did you find out how it when it comes to the 1.2 million? Because on social media, it seems that you are fined 900,000. You say there's no place and they say 1.2 million. How did they arrive?
To be very honest with you, my brother, they didn't explain anything to me concerning how they arrived to that. Because I went there that morning, all I'm interested in is to pay what they said we should pay. And the reason why I didn't draw the check before going there, because I was confused like you. The letter we received says 1.2, out there says 920 some. So this is why I went with a blank check. And when they said, no, it's 1.2, I just drafted the check, gave it to them. So such questions, I think, is entirely on you as journalists to go and ask them. Maybe it's an error on their part, I don't know. It's anybody's guess, I don't know.
Now, the next question is people are basing other petrol stations in
Mhm.
considering this now, one of these companies is Gambia.
Mhm.
So, are you people considering children in the future when places where you will locate your petrol stations to be far from the residents from the places, apart from basing it on other petrol stations?
You see, when development comes, especially in these past 5 years, we have seen a boom in businesses, right? And Gambia is no exception to the rest of the world when it comes to development. Those of you who have traveled out of this country, let's start from our neighbors in Senegal, and then you go to the Europes, the Americas, and even to the Asia. And if you have been somebody who's been paying attention to petrol stations, they live with the community everywhere. In some countries, in fact, you have a petrol station whereby you have people also living above it, like a story building. The petrol station is down, people are living upstairs. Our very place where we usually measure ourselves, that is like the UK, is even worse. Right inside the community. That is not something that is uncommon. That is not uncommon. It's not uncommon. It's very, very, very common. What is important is, as you can see, Jah Oil is very, very aware of the fact that our business is a kind of a business that is dealing with hazardous material that is highly flammable. This is why when you go to any Jah Oil station, just take a moment, look at the fencing. We have the highest fence that you can compare with anybody. The reason why he is doing that, some people will even come and say, you don't need to do this. Everybody's just doing 4 meters, 5 meters. It's enough. And he will say, no, 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 no. I'll go as high as possible to cordon off the place, just in case something happens. May God forbid. So we are very, 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 very much aware of the safety, health and safety measures and that we have to put in place. This is why we build our own storage tanks to a capacity and a standard that is tested and that we know. It will take a lot for something to happen. Anything could happen. Even if it's not a gas station, houses do get burned. So we cannot be an exception to that. But I can assure you this, we have taken measures to make sure that, we mitigate those things.
My name is Kevin.
Mhm.
wasn't it more appropriate to wait until the problem with PURA to be able to make potential infrastructure improvement and the replacement of this line?
It's a good question. Like I said, from the beginning, we have always been engaging PURA. From the foundation stage to up to the last stage. It's not that we just say, oh, forget about them, let's just go and dig and do. No, we've been engaging them every step of the way. The reason why the structural work started, like I said here, it was agreed in a meeting. Because when we raised the issue of where can you apply this 50-meter rule, and how many times has it been violated? Several times. We raised it to them. They accepted. I'm not saying this current management that is there are to be blamed. No, maybe they might have even inherited it. And we asked these strong questions with them, and they couldn't answer as to why was the regulation itself been violated from the onset, severally. So based on that, they see what we are talking about, that if they want to stick to that, it will be viewed, fairly viewed, that is discriminatory. So then we said, okay, what is the way forward? They said, well, we'll work on trying to amend this because it's not practicable. We all agree. You cannot have that here in the Gambia. Even a major road, you cannot have a 50-meter distance, much more between two properties. It's not applicable. So we all agree. They said, now what is the step forward? They said, okay, we will try to make some consultations to see how we can replace it with something more stringent in terms of health and safety. Then when we said that, we said, okay, now based on that, since we have got all our permits from physical planning to construct, can we go ahead with the structural part of the building, of the thing? And they said, yes, you can do that, but write to us requesting it. And we wrote, the letter is here, I gave it to Omi, quoting that meeting and requesting it. And then we started way back in September. This was way back in September when we started. We were, for example, in Hydara Avenue, they can say they didn't know. That's everybody's road. You're seeing the construction going on. If I told you disagree, honestly, you would have come there and cordoned off the place. They have the powers to do that. You will seal it. And then by then, if we had continued, I would not have been here standing today talking. Trust me. But no. Until when this gas station open and we are with the understanding that the regulation is gone, the 50-meter rule is gone, that is when they started to slap us with that fine. And then I said, what is happening? Maybe it's a misunderstanding. You remember we discussed this. We got the green light. So this is what happened. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. I think in the package I gave you, there is a list of the stations we applied together with this place and that place. And then the ones they've approved, and then these two they said they didn't qualify. Among them, Sinchu here is one of them. Yarambamba is one of them. Jabang is one of them. And others. They are on the list. Go there and check for yourself. Don't take my words for it. Go see for yourself. Take a measuring tape, measure it, and tell me if they qualify. It's specific to this 50-meter rule. They don't. And none did qualify. None around the country. None. So this is the problem. I didn't get you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it is, I'm not very affair with it yet because I haven't got the copy. But I haven't got the copy of the new one. But they have put some strict measures there that will mitigate, the causations of fire and its likes to avoid, accidents happening. So they have put those measures in there. So when that comes, even our existing gas stations that have been in existence since maybe 2005, when they don't meet that, you'll have to go back and readjust. That is normal. When something comes out, you go out and see your facilities and say, okay, they want us to put this and that, we put it there. But when it comes, we'll say,
Understanding the impact of 50 meters,
mhm,
we mentioned that the conductivity was very high. So
mhm, mhm,
the intent will be trying to protect the public
mhm,
from any kind of
mhm.
fires. How do you also factor in that impact, the sense, the public impact, the safety of the public, business?
Good question. As a country, when you are developing, you measure yourself, not right? You measure yourself with the developed and the ones that are progressing, because that's where you want to be, right? So what we are talking about here, about this 50-meter rule is mundane, and it cannot be applicable anywhere. It's not just because of by Gambian standard. We are talking about high standards out there. And Jah Oil Company is the only one that will always hire experts before we even buy the property to survey it and look at it to see whether it has met international standard. Because the Gambia, we don't have a standard yet. We are still.
If I may talk, you talk about Senegal, you talk about
Yeah,
other
yeah.
countries
Mm-hmm.
outside Africa. But looking at their infrastructures,
The what?
looking at their infrastructures,
Mm-hmm.
you will find for those people when there is emergencies like fire service, their accessibility could be better than in the Gambia. Because we all know that most of the time they struggle when they're trying to put out fire to access certain places. So how do you also factor that in? Because that's also important.
That all goes to what I'm saying. We are a developing nation. All those things are for government to also revamp. But apart from that, we didn't only rely our argument there. All our petrol stations, each one of them has a borehole. And that borehole, the reason why we put it there is we make sure that we, in case there's an emergency, because when you look around on Wellingara here, if you have a hydrant, a fire hydrant, maybe it will be one or none. So we'll try to provide standby hydrants for even the public to use. For example, may God forbid there's a fire somewhere, fire service can use the facility so that they can quickly, you know, rush to the scene and deal with the problem. So our plan is this. This is why we dig boreholes. We don't have to rely on NAVIC because they have low pressure sometimes and sometimes there is no water. So this is why we dig boreholes in each of our gas stations to make sure that the what? I know. Not apart from that, when you look at our aisles, we have put some like the requirements of the law, like what they require us is to put some extinguishers there, so that when it is starting, and then we have a sort of valve. These staff are all trained. Like when there is a little thing that you suspect is coming off, there is a sort of valve where you can go and shut everything off. You understand? And then that mitigates a lot of things because fire cannot go without oxygen. So when you shut it, even the thing is traveling inside it, at some point it will be choked because there is no air. So they are trained how to do that, how to shut these valves off and how to mitigate small fires before they become big fires. So they've got the training to do that, and if you're giving them the equipment to do that. But come on, let us just face the facts here now. Fighting fire in a petrol station, let us all pray to God that it doesn't happen. This is why we try to mitigate it and prevent it happening. This is why you see all these safety signs everywhere. Switch off your phone, do not smoke, do not do this. It's all because we realize that when it comes to the worst, it's only Allah who can help. Whether you are in the desert or in the middle of the sea. Because that's common thing. Thank you.
Yeah, so my last question is, um, it seems discriminatory to you people that you've been charged with a fine. And on top of that, it was not 1P that was given, but yet still you went ahead and paid the 1.2 million. How do you see that? Is it something that, is it like you just have
Thank you very much. Good question. The reason why we paid the fine is this. When a fine is levied, we believe is binding because they have the powers to do that. So we will respect that. This is why we respected what they fined us, and we went by what they wrote to us. It's 1.2. I, for one, said this is too much, and it's unfair, it's unnecessary. But when we sat and put heads together, we said no. It is a fine. Let's make it binding. Go and find out how much is it, because the figures are confusing. This is why I went with a blank check, like I said, just to be sure. What do I have to pay? And how much do I have to pay? And where to pay it? And when they clarify all that to me and said specifically it's 1.2, just like how they wrote to us, I paid it. If I had not done that today, they would say, oh, they fine us, we refuse to pay it. It would have been a different blame game again coming. And then, people can pick up very quickly on big companies saying they get away with everything. They don't follow the law. And so my boss specifically told me, no, it's binding, go and pay it. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for being here. Like I said again, go and do your own research, go and do your own investigation. That's what I implore you as journalists. Thanks.